Mining, well, quite literally, has never been more important to the Australian economy. This year, resources exports will reach a record high, worth some $310 billion before surging to over $330 billion in 2022. Don't anyone tell you it's an industry in decline. Mining employs 250,000 Australians, and it's mining that's bolstered this year's federal budget, helping to pay for unprecedented spending on hospitals, schools, aged care, and of course the NDIS. But now, after a change of National Party leader and a reshuffle that's rewarded the backers of Barnaby Joyce, the Minister for Resources, Keith Pitt, will no longer have a seat around the cabinet table, meaning, of course, mining doesn't have one either. He joins me now from Bundaberg. Keith Pitt, I'm sure you'll give me a clean and sanitised version here, but it's a big blow to the mining sector that you are no longer in cabinet. Why? What reason did Barnaby Joyce give you?
Peter, great to be with you. Great to be with your viewers. Look, you know this as well as I do. These are decisions of the leader. I mean, my job is to continue to represent the industry to the best of my ability, which I will. And as you've just outlined, I mean, what an outstanding success. New Australian record, $310 billion, forecast to go past $340 billion next financial year. I mean, they are holding our economy together.
Yeah, well, I agree with all of that, but it's an own goal. I mean, Anthony Albanese straight away came out and said he'll put resources back into cabinet if he wins. Problem is their policies stink. I mean, everyone knows their policies on coal and gas and mining are not policies that want to see the industry succeed. You've got policies that want to see the industry succeed, but why relegate it to the outer ministry?
Oh, mate, it's not about me. This is all about the sector. It's about the Australian people. It's about what we're doing for the economy, how we're keeping them safe. And if I talk about flip-floppers, I'm not talking about footwear. I mean, Mr Albanese and his team can't hold a consistent position for 48 hours. I mean, they had to have a vote on the Beetaloo Basin as to whether they support our economic supports into the Beetaloo to make that happen in their caucus. We had the Shadow Minister, Madeleine King, go out and support the gas industry in the sector and exploration, and 48 hours later, the member for Corangamite out demanding that we don't have gas exploration. I mean, they just can't hold it together.
All right, well, you're being gracious. I'll give Barnaby a piece of my mind, but I think your background as an electrical engineer, you're one of the practical people who are actually in the parliament. I always thought it was a no-brainer that you're in cabinet, but I understand how you reward the backers and all those games that get being played. But I think it's a backward move for the party. It's a backward move for the resources sector. But let's move on to some other issues. A whole lot of climate activists have really upped their assault on profitable companies in the sector. The Investor Group on Climate Change, they call themselves, have held recent meetings with Treasury, APRA and ASIC about trying to force the ASX 300 companies to disclose their so-called climate risks by next year. Now, these people are not much better than Extinction Rebellion in expensive suits, Keith Pitt. Isn't this going to make things harder for the resources sector in Australia if this sort of activism happens in boardrooms?
Well, I think that's exactly right. This is why we've established a committee under George Christensen to look at those insurance and finance issues. And they're going through their paces, and I hope to see some very strong recommendations. But it's not just in the boardrooms, Peter. I mean, these people are out shutting down mum and dad businesses, secondary boycotts, blocking the concrete processing facilities, access to their trucks, tying themselves to railway lines. It's a complete nonsense. We've got companies out there who are just absolutely doing everything they can to stay operational, to keep their people employed. If we have a look at the one outbreak we've had in the resources sector over the weekend, what a phenomenal result. Just one. We've now got hundreds and hundreds of people locked up on site in isolation in very, very difficult conditions. The company's doing everything they can. Their protocols have kicked in. The sector's really, really strong in how they manage this. But can you imagine where we'd be without them? And this is what these activists want. They want us to shut down the sector on which we rely.
How concerned are you about the ability of mining companies in Australia or allied mining sector companies to access capital, giving the sort of the climate change kowtowing of some of the big banks?
I'm embarrassed about the position Australia's banks have taken. I mean, they don't even separate thermal coal from met coal. So, coal that goes to make steel compared to thermal coal, which is burnt generally to produce steam, predominantly for electricity and other processes. And yet we've got their chief executives saying how proud they are to not provide money to Australian coal. Well, those Australian coal workers, and there's more than 50,000 of them, well, they're paying mortgages and car loans like everybody else off the back of their sector. So, if they're serious, well, stop giving mortgages to people who work in the resources sector and see how good your bottom line looks.
I'm going to ask you too, I read a report about Chinese state-owned companies moving into massive iron ore mines in Cameroon and the Congo. This seems to me just another demonstration that they're doing everything they can to move away from Australian minerals. How much of a concern is that to you?
Oh, look, we're always concerned about our markets. That's why we've put $20 million towards the global modernisation strategy to ensure that we do have other opportunities for Australia's exporters. But once again, I mean, every other country is doing something similar, Peter. They're looking to ensure they do have other areas of supply. I mean, iron ore for Australia, more than 140 billion this financial year. That's a big tick in the box. And I know other countries are certainly looking to diversify their supply routes, as we are with critical minerals and as we are looking to have more downstream potential in terms of processing for resources. So I don't think this is unusual. Of course, it's concerning and we are watching it very, very closely. But for the short to medium term, I think Australia's iron ore sector will go from strength to strength. And that's why so many people are investing in it. We've got so many people employed.
Okay, there's another audition for Cabinet with all of that information in your head. Thank you for your time.
Careful, mate, you make me blush.
All right, can't make a bloke from Bundaberg blush, can we?